right, good evening, everyone. We're going to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is our second public meeting on the potential purchase of Stillwell Fields by the school district. So we held a meeting about a week and a half ago, and there will be one more public meeting, and there will be some information shared by mail, regular old mail, in district mailboxes over the course of the next week or so. So you're probably accustomed to seeing the folded newsletter that comes from the district and says Syosset Pride at the top. That comes out every year as part of the budget. And then the district also does a postcard, which is required by law's property tax report card. So that'll be coming out shortly as well. That said, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to do a little bit of information dissemination on what is proposed. And then we'll have an opportunity for folks to ask questions and get answers. I'll go through some ground rules for that when we get a little bit closer to that part of the presentation. But what I'd like to do first is just go through what is being proposed so that everyone has the same understanding to start the process. So this is a unique opportunity, something that I've not seen the like of before in my career, and it's an unusual opportunity, so it requires a little bit of extra explanation. But it is an opportunity that could potentially add a lot of resources to the school district. So the vision was to, obviously, we're a school district, see how this could improve the lives of students. But we know that school districts are community assets, and so we wanted to see how this asset could improve the community as well. And we also know that the students that are in our schools during the day are on these fields nights and weekends, and anything that we do to make them safer and more secure makes the children of the school district safer by extension. So high-level overview, the Stillwell Park is actually quite large. We're only talking about the 35 acres that are cleared fields that are on the western side of the property. The remaining 270 so acres of wooded property would remain county property. It would remain a preserve. It would remain accessible in the same ways that it is now. So Nassau County would continue to own and operate that. This property currently, the field side, is owned by Nassau County but operated by the town of Oyster Bay. So the two of them have a relationship, but it is Nassau County property. The county had a couple of conditions for the sale of the property. One of those conditions was that community use groups that already have permits to use the property, that those permits must transfer with the property. I see that as an advantage, not a disadvantage, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And the county was also willing to convey, along with the property, $3 million of resources that they had already earmarked for an improvement to the property, and that would be incorporated with some additional district funds in order to make for a larger improvement to the property. On an ongoing basis, this would be school district property. It would be part of our series of campuses that we maintain and manage. And in my mind, it looks like an extra large high school campus. So we'll talk a lot about athletics tonight, but I wanted to pause a little bit and see and share some of the opportunities beyond athletics that we saw in this property. So folks who have had children in the district for a long time may recall a day when our younger children, our elementary students, would take in-school district field trips from their elementary schools to the high school to do environmental learning at a facility that the high school built and was operating. That's kind of fallen by the wayside, but the opportunity, especially with this large 270-acre preserve, to do something much more thoughtful and robust around environmental education, particularly for our younger students, presents itself immediately as an opportunity to take advantage of. We are very proud of our arts programs here in Syosset, and the idea of creating an outdoor performance space with a lawn and a small stage where a jazz band, or if you have a student who has gone through the high school, you may be familiar with the Shakespeare Bardathon, which is a nonstop reading of multiple Shakespeare plays. And that's the kind of event that could take place there. And then lastly, we were inspired by something that has been constructed up in Letchworth State Park, which is south of Rochester. They're calling it an autism trail. We would call it, I think, a sensory walk, but this would be a way for students that have a different perception, different sensory perception, to be able to also have access to environmental education in a way that really makes sense for how they do their processing. And I think what they did was kind of groundbreaking at Letchworth, and I think it would be fun to do something similar for that population of students in our school district as well. The athletics side of the property, it's obviously used extensively for athletics now: flag football, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, softball. And the overall effort would be to turn some of the fields into synthetic turf fields, regrade some of the grass fields that right now are uneven and therefore potentially dangerous, and minimize the challenges that are created by having the drainage issues that I understand exist on the property. And lastly, to create some walking paths, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and to light some of the fields. The fields are currently lit often with diesel powered portable lights, and for lots of reasons, operating a lot of diesel engines around kids is not ideal. In addition, as I mentioned, enhanced safety and security. We would take this opportunity to install some surveillance cameras as part of the district's surveillance system, and we would have, at times when kids were present, security on site. The visible presence of security has a deterrent factor. It also makes sure that there's somebody who's available to respond if there is an issue. 2 years ago, when the district made a tremendous number of investments in security, one of the things that was a change was we went from only having security during the school day to having security nights and weekends as well, recognizing that these are our kids who are on the property, and nothing about the need for safety changes just because it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we would approach this similarly. There's certainly the opportunity to improve parking and traffic flow on this property. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the public on this already, and renovation of the existing bathroom facility. My understanding is that the fixtures themselves are in good shape, but the plumbing that they're attached to could really use improvement, and that would make these facilities work a lot better for everyone, and add mobile facilities on the opposite side of the property so that someone doesn't have to go quite so far to take advantage of the restroom. A small playground for young children, and obviously a little bit of landscaping. So this is the slide I really want to spend some time on, and I'll try to move from left to right across the slide so that I can help you follow me. On the left side, going up and down, that's Southwoods Road and the existing main parking lot for the property. So one of the challenges that I've observed is that often there are 3 left turns occurring simultaneously at that south entrance. That's the entrance that's towards the bottom of this picture. And if a car is trying to leave Stillwell and go south on Southwoods Road, and another car is trying to enter Stillwell from Southwoods Road, and a car is trying to leave from where the tennis courts are, there's a lot of congestion there and a lot of difficulties. So that we worked with the architects and engineers. We think that can be alleviated to some degree by having that become an entrance only, and having the other curb cut that's a little further north, up on this diagram, on Southwoods Road be exit only. So traffic would enter towards the bottom, it would exit towards the top. It would mean that the left-hand turns from the top, there wouldn't be any cars waiting, and it means that left-hand turns going in, there wouldn't be any cars trying to come out, competing with those cars coming in. And then Cars entering would either have the choice of going to the left and into the main parking lot, or staying to the right and going down towards a new parking lot that we would construct, or the entrance to the wooded preserve. The fire department facility would remain. The existing bathrooms would remain. Obviously, as I said, we would try to improve them a little bit. To the right of that and in the center of the property are the turf fields that would be striped for multi-sport use. This would be soccer and lacrosse. They would be lit. They're separated by a T-shaped concrete walk, and the purpose for that concrete walk is to do several things. First, we recognize some of our residents are mobility challenged, so this would make it easier for a grandparent, say, to access some of the fields and watch their grandchildren play. It'd also be a place where you could safely set up a folding chair and not have it rock. And if, God forbid, there were an accident or an injury, it's a much easier way to get someone out, because there would be a nice smooth path on which to roll a stretcher or another piece of equipment if that became necessary. So for extraction reasons and just for access reasons, that path will improve the safety of that area. That center part of the property would be ringed with lights so that this would be accessible at night. And the idea in locating this in the very center of the property is to try and minimize the amount of light scatter that would go into the neighborhood on Woodland Drive just to the north, or Southwoods Road just to the west across the street. So the kind of lighting that would be installed would be LED lighting, which is a low energy lighting, and obviously since it's new, it will be modern and have a reduced amount of scatter. And there are technologies now that are used for these kinds of fields that do try to reduce the amount of light that spills over elsewhere from the field. We do want to have a little bit of spillover because there's a security advantage to having some spillover. Just don't want to have so much that it becomes a nuisance. In the upper left-hand corner, those are grass fields that will be regraded. It will take some time for them to regrow. Hopefully the turf fields, we can, if this goes through, we would be able to stagger the work so that some fields were always available even while others were being worked on. And then as we move to the right across the property, regulation lacrosse field with some fencing around it. The existing baseball and softball fields would have the infields covered with synthetic turf. So my understanding is that the clay infields don't dry well and present an uneven surface. This would allow those surfaces to be more usable, more playable, more easily played on quickly after some sort of a rainstorm. Finally, moving all the way to the right, you can see the words perimeter walking running path. And if you look at the perimeter of this property and you draw a ring around it, it works out to be exactly 1 mile. So if you're a runner like me, 1 mile distances are great because then you can get your mile times very easily. So one thing we noticed during the pandemic when the school district was closed was quite a few of our senior citizens were walking on the property at the high school track as a way of getting exercise but avoiding traffic in the neighborhoods. And it was unfortunate that in September when we reopened, we had to close the track to public use during the school day again, and unfortunately we displaced some of our senior citizens when that happened. But the opportunity to present an alternative where residents can go and get exercise and walk with this perimeter walking path presents itself as another opportunity, and it has the collateral benefit of allowing, again, if there's some sort of an injury on one of these fields, it is easier to access these fields with some sort of a paved path if it's necessary to get to someone quickly in order to aid them or in order to extract them. And again, we would take advantage of that path as a place to put some surveillance video and some low energy lighting. At the bottom, there's a big triangular parking lot there. I had gotten a suggestion from a resident that I go on a Saturday and see what it looks like there when there's a big soccer tournament going on. So I did that a week ago Saturday, and there was quite a lot of activity, 3 baseball games going and all the soccer fields going at the same time. And there was a lot of traffic there and there was a lot of congestion. So my observations of that congestion were that There are parts where it's narrow, there are parts where it's wide, there are parts where people parallel park on both sides, there are parts where people park head in, and because it's all a jumble, it's not all that well organized. There's an opportunity, again, to kind of streamline, add a little bit more parking, and come up with a net increase in the amount of parking that is available on the property. So last three things to talk about. Between the two baseball fields on the right and just north of that triangular parking lot, we're planning space for a mobile comfort station. So this would be a concrete pad that mobile comfort station could be rolled onto. These are much nicer than a porta potty. They're really like a mobile home on wheels, but just with bathrooms. And that would be available during the warm weather months, and then something that could be removed when the weather got colder. And that would allow people who are taking advantage of lacrosse or the baseball fields to not have to go quite so far to get to the bathrooms, or if someone was using the wooded part of the property and needed a comfort station, it would present itself as available. In the middle of the bottom, there is a space for a mobile bandshell outdoor theater, as I mentioned before, a lawn that you could spread a blanket on, and a small piece of concrete on which you could put a temporary or small stage, and student performances could take place. And then last feature would be a playground. That's the tan-shaped triangle with a couple of small pieces of playground equipment. We know that families have children of all ages, and while older kids may be playing on the ball fields, younger kids may need to keep themselves entertained. And so this would offer itself as a place for those younger kids to be able to spend some time while their older siblings were taking advantage of the activities that they were pursuing. So this is the proposal. Obviously, there are an awful lot of features to it. The idea is to try and maximize the use of the property so that district residents get as much opportunity out of it as possibly can, while making it safer overall for the children and residents who use the property. So the construction costs are itemized here as the two important numbers to draw your attention to. Obviously, the overall cost of $10.5 million, and then a fairly large contingency number, the $1.6 million figure. This is not property that we've owned. We have done a phase 1 environmental study on it, and that came back without any concerns. But we want to make sure that we have some flexibility in case of cost overruns, or if we discover something during the course of construction, we want to have ample room to be able to take care of anything that presents itself. And then ongoing operating costs. As I said earlier, this would be school district property. It would be our responsibility to maintain it. We think that the overall cost would potentially be in the neighborhood of $340,000 a year, but that was intended to be a conservative number. Certainly, if the district had this many turf fields, we have one turf field right now, but this would be several, it would be much more cost effective for the district to do the turf maintenance in-house instead of contracting it out, which is what we would do right now. So to do it in-house, we would need to do some training of our employees, we would need to buy some equipment, but on an ongoing basis, it would save a tremendous amount of money. The Syosset Soccer organization has pledged money that they were spending on diesel fuel for the lighting to the school district to offset some of these maintenance costs. And the school district right now buses kids to places like Syosset Woodbury Park, the Nassau Hub, the Cantiog Park, again, because we're tight on space. And so these other properties and parks are opportunities for us to keep our kids busy and on, and keep their athletics program going. So this would be savings that we would realize because we wouldn't have to bus the kids anymore. And, another sort of collateral benefit of having additional fields would be that we would be able to do a better job of ensuring gender parity between our sports. So right now, with only one turf field, only one sport can be on that field in the ideal time immediately after the high school day ends. And if the boys have the field first, then the girls would have to go second and vice versa. So having more fields means that more students can get their practices out of the way, head home, start their homework, have dinner, do whatever else is in their interests for that evening, and it makes it a little bit easier to keep it fair for everyone when there's just more resources to go around. So as I said at the beginning, the funds for the construction would be comprised from several sources. $3 million, as I mentioned, from Nassau County, $1 million each from 2 developers who pledged money to the district to offset the potential impact of their development. So Sagamore is the development on Jericho Turnpike right on the Nassau County border across from Ohika Castle. And 80 Jericho Turnpike is just west of Underhill, where the trailer park used to be. So those funds, by investing them in a capital project like this, there would be something that the district got of lasting value from them. And then the remaining amount of funds would be raised through a borrowing. So to give a sense of what the debt service on that borrowing is, the third bullet, it's about $23 for every $10,000 paid in taxes. But the district is about to roll off a debt. So the net increase in taxes will actually go down. But we thought that this number would be useful to give folks a sense of proportion in terms of how much it is relative to the overall cost. So we've been collecting questions from the public. We've been posting them online. The website for this project is syossetschools.org/Stillwell. And there is an FAQ document on there that's a living document. We've been adding to it over time. And I wanted to just go through a handful of the questions and answers that we've gotten so far, but there's a much more extensive document there. The preserved status of the remaining land is not impacted by the school district, and access to that property will remain open from the school district. Which Syosset schools will use Stillwell? Certainly we see this as being an asset for the high school program. It's entirely possible that both HBT and Southwoods may use it from time to time in order, again, to balance out the needs of the district. So that might involve some busing from HBT, but HBT and Southwoods often play one another in middle school sports, and so that would present itself as a logical place for them to have those contests. As I mentioned earlier, outdoor and environmental education. Who will have access to the property? One of the stipulations from the county was that people who currently have access to the property need to remain to have access to the property, meaning Nassau County residents. What would that look like in practice? In practice, this is going to be school district property, so school district uses would have first claim on the time on the property. Then the other stipulation is that all the existing usage permits have to transfer over. So whether that's Syosset soccer, baseball, softball, lacrosse, flag football, all of those existing permits transfer over. All of the time that is in use by those groups would remain in use by those groups. If there is time remaining after those 2 uses are prioritized, then the remaining time would be accessed as, if you wanted to use the gym at this school, you'd go through a community use of facilities request. Organizations have to show that they have the ability to present a certificate of insurance, et cetera, and that would be the process through which others could use the property. Who's responsible for the maintenance? The school district would be. Who will own the property? The school district would be the owner. If the entire county has access, shouldn't the county share the expense? The county is contributing the property itself, which has value. I don't know how I would value that property, and also contributing $3 million. So it's not as though the county isn't contributing a significant amount of money to this. Why the rush? The project presented itself as an opportunity now, and the district has an upcoming election. Running multiple elections is just a cost and also a challenge during a pandemic. So the opportunity to do both things at the same time seemed like the most sensible thing to do. When would the construction start? If this is approved by the public, then we would go into a design phase that looks more like architectural design and less like drawings, less like pictures. And that will take a series of months. At some point, those drawings have to go to the state to be approved by the state education department. The state ed department has had some staffing cutbacks, and typically it takes about 40 weeks for a project to be approved by the state these days. So that means that it's unlikely, I think, to see construction occurring until probably sometime in the summer of 2023. So the one advantage that this property has that an ordinary school district property does not is it's not as necessary to work around the school district schedule. We try to schedule as much work in the months of July and August as possible for obvious reasons, but it may be possible to do work here during what would normally be the school year, January, February, depending on whether the weather permits the kind of work. So that might lend us to some more favorable pricing when it goes to bid, and it might give us a little bit better time frame to do some of the work when the property is not heavily used. Why willing to invest in Stillwell? It is the opportunity to improve a property that is already heavily used by students, the same students that attend our schools. And we have a landlocked high school that is slowly growing, but still growing. And so this is an opportunity to have additional space for the school district to consider. If the district buys Stillwell, will juniors still be allowed to park there? The answer is, of course, yes. And if anything, it'll be safer for juniors to park there because of the presence of on-site security. And we would love to work with the county on trying to get some additional traffic control on Southwoods Road to slow people down and to make sure that where kids cross is safer. I know that the county has had difficulty staffing their crossing guard locations, but we would absolutely want to work with them on trying to do that. So how does this work mechanically? There will be 4 propositions on the May ballot. The first proposition will be for the school district budget, yes, no proposition. Proposition 2 will be to convey this 35 acres to the school district for the price of $1. The third proposition is the proposition to invest the money to do the upgrades to the property. Both propositions have to be approved in order for either of them to be approved. So they have to be done separately based on our attorney's explanation. So both of them have to be yes. So you can't buy the property and not improve it. You can't offer to improve property that you don't own. And so the vote will be on May 18th. Voting hours are being extended by an hour this year to 10 o'clock at night. And the voting locations are, as they always are, have been for at least the last 7 years, the high school and Robbins Lane and HBT. So I'll be happy, I should have introduced my companions here. I'm joined by our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Dr. Rufo, and our Director of Operations, who would be responsible for maintaining this, Mr. Greg Hamilton. They have more detail about some of the questions that I anticipate we might receive. And we're going to take your questions, and we'll, if you've come to a Board of Education meeting, we're going to follow the same format that occurs at the Board of Education meeting. We're going to let everyone who has a comment come and speak for 4 minutes. Then when your 4 minutes has ended, you give somebody else a turn. They get their 4 minutes. When everyone's had their first turn, I'll go through. I'll try to summarize if there's some overlap between the comments or questions. I'll just pull it together and answer just once. And then after everybody's had a turn and I've been able to respond, then anyone who wants an additional 4 minutes will have that opportunity. I'll respond one last time, and then we'll all go home to our families. So with that, what I would ask as a courtesy is when you come to, this is not a Board of Education meeting, you don't have to sign in, but if you come to the microphone and you could just say your name and try to overcome the fact that there's a mask on so that I write it down accurately, that would be appreciated.
Hi, good evening. Tanya Getz, resident of Syosset. So I had sent my questions via email to the board, but The first question that I have is related to the insurance expense of $7,000. Because one of my concerns is the extra liability that the district is taking on with this property, and the fact that, the district spent, I believe it was close to $10 million on security procedures, ballistic doors, extra foyers, security guards at all the buildings, because of the concern of violence in the schools. So now we're looking at doing this particular property, and it's to be much more open space. And we have already had in this country this year 147 shootings so far per Fox News, with the definition being a minimum of 4 gunshot victims. Now, this doesn't mean that I think, nothing can happen with the Stillwell Fields. It certainly means that I think, given the fact that you're looking at adding fields and having more activity even than what has been taking place on there, and evening events, since you have lighting, that I think it is certainly going to be extra liability that it seems like these district residents would carry, since the county is stepping back. And so there are districts, since the Parkland shooting, that there's a thing now, active shooter insurance. So I wondered if that was included in the $7,000 insurance expense. The other question that I had in the proposal is a follow-up to Maureen Hayern's question last time round, was what else could this money that's coming out that we borrowed and now we're reinvesting for borrowing be used for in the district? And for me specifically, one of the things that I was really hoping to see was a later start time for the high school, and expense was always one of the reasons why that could not be done. Logistically, there was the challenge, but there was also the expense. And so it was a long period of study looking at that. And of course, the pandemic upended that investigation, that study, and we haven't had an update on that. But I still think the later start time is of benefit to all our adolescents for their well-being. Everyone has talked about the research in that the late start time would benefit, and you have extensive homework loads at the high school level, the APs. So I guess I'm interested to know how this would impact a later start time for the high school and the status of that plan. And if they're completely not linked, that's fine, but money is money, and if we're spending somewhere else, there's less to go around. So those are my questions. For now, I'll let somebody else.
Hi, I'm Lynn Abramson. My question is about the porta potties, the fancy porta potties that are coming. Long-term operating costs of those may be way higher than if we actually put in facilities, and if the ground is already being ripped up, and the question is putting in pipe and things like that, I feel like that's the time to do it. So I just wanted to know what the decision process was behind that.
Good evening, I'm Mark Nathan, and I'm just hearing everything you have to do, and I appreciate all the work you guys put into it, but what I fail to understand is why the school district has to own this, and I'm trying to figure out if Nassau County did this in conjunction with the town as they are now, what would we not get versus accepting all these responsibilities, maintenance costs, insurance, liability, et cetera, down the line. I mean, working together with the county and the town, why do we have to take on this entire responsibility? And what, can you tell me specifically, would be eliminated if it was done differently with the school district not owning it?
My name is Ron Gans. Thank you all for spending the extra time here tonight. Wasn't even going to plan on talking, but about an hour ago I started to make a few notes and comments and things to discuss. Some of it I just came up with. What is a Phase 1 environmental and why did it pass? Phase 1 environmental, primarily visual, looking around, seeing if there's any environmental concerns. And typically you wouldn't find that at Stillwell because Stillwell is actually a perpetual preserve. You spoke about a path to help maybe people that have autism or other issues. There was an event just held at Stillwell in the Woods this last weekend by the Orienteering Club, which actually serves that exact purpose. Why do they have diesel lights? Because Stillwell is a perpetual preserve. They can't put wires in the ground. I'm sure everybody knows that. But let's get to a few other things. Snow. What does snow bring to Stillwell? ATVs, Jeeps, trucks. How will the AstroTurf hold up every time it snows and all the locals want to come out and four-wheel? Environmental education has always existed in the past. When I graduated from Syosset High School, I had been taken over to Stillwell Woods by my science teachers. So I'm not sure why this property has to be purchased for environmental education. It's always existed. Syosset High School has always had a cycling club. Not sure if it's still going on, but the cycling club would go over and use Stillwell Woods Preserve without the school district owning it. Elderly and disabled should have access. Why have the sports clubs not addressed this already? Why do they not have a golf cart available? On call, you sign up for it. Somebody needs access to a field. Somebody needs access to a bathroom. Why is Syosset High School getting involved in supplying this when the sports clubs have ignored it? Parking problem. Yes, there is a parking problem. It's in direct relationship to how many fields exist. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I had this conversation with the then Deputy Commissioner of Parks of the town of Oyster Bay as he was slipping in all the lacrosse fields, flag football fields, adding a couple of more soccer fields. That's when the problem came about. You all know that there was an attempted transfer of Stillwell Woods to the town of Oyster Bay about a decade ago. You can look that up. It didn't go very well. Fire department and emergency access has always existed, whether the access road is passable or not. Because as you know, the fire department put in another curb cut by their building that's gated. They also have their ATVs on a trailer in case they need to pull them out to go to other areas. But they can very easily access the preserve and the sports field from their building. Clearly, the sports fields are being utilized by our community. Presently, the town of Oyster Bay covers most of the Stillwell expenses. I did become very friendly with the person in charge of the maintenance. It was huge. The amount of work they did to maintain the fields was a hindrance to the town of Oyster Bay.
So, Mr. Gans, I'm going to ask you to finish up because your 4 minutes are over, but
Okay,
after I've
I have a
answered some
few more.
questions and you want to come back, you're
Yeah,
more than welcome
okay.
to.
I'll do this one and then we can talk after if that works. This attempted transfer puts the responsibility of expense on the shoulder of the Syosset residents/taxpayers. And unfortunately, many members of these sports clubs live and pay taxes outside of the Syosset School District.
Thank you, Mr. Gans.
There's a chance I have a few more.
We'll go through one round and then we'll take any others.
Hello, I'm Mitchell Lieberman, Syosset. I'm also a member of the executive board of Syosset Baseball. First of all, I want to thank you for the diligence, the time, and all the effort that you put into this. And I know there was a lot of talk and a lot of planning that went into it, so we really, truly appreciate it. As someone that has seen these fields for the last 12 or 13 years, and has played on them and played through some treacherous conditions, I could tell you a lot of our board members have spent time actually doing the fields the grassroots way, showing up on a Saturday morning with rakes, with liners, and getting these fields ready. And the thought of the school taking them over and turning this into, what could potentially be a field of dreams, for many of us is truly exciting. And we've been looking forward to a day when either the town or the county or in this case the school would take this over. I just had a few questions related to the layouts and some of the cost and the architecture. If you could possibly share with us on some of the estimates, was this like a preliminary estimate? Was this something that was like more detailed? Do you plan on getting more bids on these type of fields? And also, from a baseball perspective, and I'm just going to comment on the baseball side because I realize there's soccer, lacrosse, there's other sports, and we're all speaking together. We would almost want to reimagine these fields to some degree, because a lot of the modern fields are being built with almost a circular structure, and then to be efficient in space, some of the fields just kind of in a circular way just back each other. So I'm just wondering if how set you are on these plans, and if you're open to, maybe revisiting different architects and different ideas for what these fields can be. Those are the only questions I have, and of course, well, actually one more with reference to the rest stations or comfort stations. Is there a possibility of turning those into like structural facilities, like a bathroom, like a main structure in the middle, with potentially like a vending station or soft drinks or minor snacks? But again, we truly are very excited. I know I speak on behalf of Syosset Baseball. I speak on on behalf of a lot of the community members that I've spoken to. This is needed. This is something that the people are truly excited about. And, we hope to have a lot more dialogue moving forward in making this happen. And thank you.
So, Ms. Getz, I'll respond, after everybody's had a chance, I'll respond to everybody who had the first round, and then you'll have another 4 minutes.
I haven't, oh, okay, oh, all right, so, that's.
All right, going once, twice. Okay, round one over. So I'll ask Dr. Rufo to talk a little bit about insurance. Okay. My apologies, I didn't see you.
That's okay. Patricia Kessler. Do you need my address?
No.
No. Okay. The questions that I have, and I don't know if you've addressed these already, but I'm wondering the conditions of the money that came from the construction projects. It seems that money is going to be used for this project, but is that money that was allocated for anything else? And if you could just explain the circumstances of how the district got that $2 million. And the other thing is, can you also explain in some detail the insurance part of this? The plan says it's going to be $7,000 went to our insurance policy. What is that going to cover? do the individual permit holders cover their own insurance? And how much is the district going to cover insurance for the people that use this area? And that's really all the questions I have for now.
Thank you. Anyone else for round one? Okay. Dr. Rufo, as our business official, is responsible for all things insurance. I'm going to turn that response over to her, and we'll combine the two questions, Ms. Getz and Ms. Kessler's question about insurance.
Press the button. Okay, thank you. We reviewed this, the project with representatives from our insurance company, which is called NYSER, New York State Insurance Reciprocal, which is used by most districts, most districts on Long Island and throughout New York State. And we reviewed the project with them, the planned use, and the estimate that they gave us was related to property, your property insurance. The other aspects of insurance that the district holds are other policies, are liability policies. NYSER felt that the use was consistent with other types of uses that we use now. We have facility use forms. Other outside agencies use our fields, so this is consistent use. So they did not see a material change in policies that cover our liability. Now, having said that, over time, if your claims increase because there's increased activity, there's always the possibility that your claims history will impact your premiums over time, so there's that risk. One of the ways that we mitigate the risk, or it's called risk transfer, when you do have other organizations coming on, is that you require them to have insurance as well. And the district does that now and would continue to do so.
Just go into some detail about the risk transfer and what we require of community use of facilities now.
Yes, we have a facilities use policy that outlines the types of insurance that outside groups have to have. I want to say it's $1.2 million per occurrence for liability insurance. There's property depending on the use of typically for. I was going to say workman's comp, but that's not typical for people who are using for athletic events. So that's the type of insurance that are required, and there's also requirements about the types of firms that will accept insurance by. They have to be A-rated firms to ensure that they're solvent companies.
Thank you. Ms. Getz, your other question about what else could the money be used for, I think the answer to that is every person with an imagination will have an idea for where to spend money in a school district. This is the opportunity that's being presented to us now, and so in some ways you have to kind of evaluate it as its own thing. Comparing it to a spending initiative like a later start time, the challenge with the later start time is twofold. It is an operational challenge and it is an ongoing cost challenge. So the ongoing cost of this property, and let's say net of the offsets, is going to be somewhere less than $200,000. The challenge with doing a later high school start time is you don't have consistent length of day between the secondary schools and the elementary schools. And so it means that either in the morning or in the afternoon, you're going to have a period of time when the high school buses have to run simultaneously with the elementary school buses because the elementary school day is shorter. So that means essentially doubling the number of buses that you're operating, because at one period of time, instead of the buses doing all the high school kids, then all the middle school kids, then all the elementary school kids, for some point in time, you're going to have to do double the number of runs, and it would require double the number of buses. And doing something like that, we estimated a couple of years ago, would be on the order of $4 million per year. And really inefficient and, not great for the environment and all of that. So on an ongoing basis, these two things are whole orders of magnitude apart in terms of cost. And a one-time investment of $10 million would not solve the busing problem because we Syosset would be in a very difficult place to try and purchase buses because we don't have any place to warehouse the buses. So every bus you have has to go in a bus yard. You have to have a transportation depot. You have to have people that do the maintenance on the buses. When I was the superintendent of Nassau Buses, we had about 100 buses and a huge operation to maintain all of that. So I have some impression of what goes into that. So unfortunately, those two things can't really be compared to one another because they're two different kinds of things. But I take your point about the advantages of a later high school start time. And obviously, we've been focused on running school in a pandemic, and that's been a thing. But I'm hoping that as we come out of this pandemic, we'll be able to return to some of the things that the district had been working on previously. Ms. Abramson, your question about having the ground open, and I'm sorry, I'm looking, thank you, and doing the plumbing now, it's an awfully long plumbing run, and it's an awful lot of money. So, $10.5 million on the one hand is a lot of money. On the other hand, there's a lot of work, and at some point you can have more ideas that spend more money, but to try and use the money as efficiently as possible within this constraint of $10.5 million, there were things that didn't seem to me to be affordable, at least in the first round. That said, we have a very large contingency in there, and this goes to some degree to Mr. Lieberman's question about whether there could be changes to the ideas that we were presenting after the fact. And if it appears that some of the things that we had held back the contingency for are not going to come to pass, then it's possible that it would be affordable to do some other improvements that might set the property up for more long-term situations. But it's really about trying to make the most of the $10.5 million that you have. Mr. Nathan, your question, what would we not get if the school district didn't do this work and the county did it itself? In some ways, that's a question for the county. $3 million obviously will buy only a third of what $10 million will buy, less. And how they would choose, the county, would choose to allocate that money, I couldn't say. And I kind of think we all know what the needs are there. We've got some bumpy properties. People would love to see some turf there. The road, particularly the road to the back, is very bumpy and uneven, needs some attention. The parking could use some improvement. How the county would spend that $3 million, I'm not sure, but you certainly wouldn't get nearly as much work done. And to your question, why take on the responsibility? It does help the school district to have more athletic fields. We're proud of our athletics programs here, and it's been terrific to see all of the success our athletes have enjoyed, even this year in the pandemic. And we have robust middle school programs. We have robust varsity, JV, JVB programs, and we like to make sure that we have as much gender parity as we can. So it just ends up being lots of kids participating in lots of sports, and the advantage of this is it's more places to logistically plan that. Mr. Gans, and Phase 1 Environmental, we have a district environmental consultant. We asked the environmental consultant to do that Phase 1 environmental study for us. They do not only visual inspection, but records review, and their review of the records of this property didn't present any challenges that we need to be aware of or worried about. No challenges of any kind were presented. The point about it being a perpetual preserve, and I'm just trying to remember if it was your comment or someone else's about not having wires in the ground. Yes, it was yours. The property actually does already have wires in the ground. If you're back by the baseball fields on the south side of the property, there is a small concrete building there that houses an electrical transfer panel, and next to it is a small like medium voltage transformer that's in the ground. So there is obviously underground wiring to energize that facility. So it would probably not be adequate for the amount of lighting that we're talking about, but there is wiring in the ground there already. Snow ATVs, things like that, that would certainly not be permitted on the turf, and I don't think it would be permitted on the grass either. We don't permit it on other school district properties. I don't know what the rules are for the use of the Nassau County Preserve, but certainly we wouldn't want to tear the fields up after investing a lot of money in them. I agree that there is still a cycling club, you'll be pleased to know, and they still go cycling in Stillwell Woods. It's a mountain biking club, and there's nothing that prevents us from using Stillwell. What we're imagining in terms of the autism trail, and I was excited to hear about the orienteering club. I'd like to meet some people there and see if they'd want to be involved if this is successful, to get their ideas for how we can improve that experience for our kids with autism. But there's nothing that prevents us from doing it, but if it's school district property, it can be improved in a way that's permanent, and hopefully that's something that, because they're permanent improvements, educators can plan around. I take your point about the parking problem being a result of having added fields. When I visited the property 2 Saturdays ago, we were hosting a home football game at the same time, and we had reserved away the tennis court parking lots, thinking that we might need them for visitor spectators. And if we had known that there was going to be a large tournament across the street at the same time, we could have coordinated better and made that parking available. I think that you can add more parking, and we have a drawing that shows how it could be added, but the two properties, the two parking lots, I think would have to work together in order to try and accommodate people, and hopefully folks would understand that. The fire department does have access. That access would be preserved. I think having the fire department on the school district property is a huge asset, frankly, and we would do whatever the department wanted from their perspective to make their response as efficient as possible. We would certainly want to facilitate that. We did speak to the town, and we asked them questions about, Mr. Hamilton spoke to folks at the town and asked them for some information about what the costs were to maintain it and for utilities and things like that. The town was nice as could be, but they don't record those expenses on an individual campus basis or for any one property. So we instead worked with our architects and engineers to estimate what those costs were, and Mr. Hamilton worked with his team that already maintains 10 other properties in the school district to try and estimate what the cost would be for this property and 35 acres. Mr. Lieberman, your question about the layout, the costs, the architecture, as I mentioned during the presentation, we're in the conceptual phase right now. The architects have presented us with this conceptual layout. Obviously, a lot of thought's been put into the layout to try and use it efficiently. I'm sorry, Mr. Lieberman, I lost you in the audience. Thank you. Do I think that this is the final representation of what would be built? I don't. At some point, these go from pictures to real drawings, and then if there is a better idea or a more efficient way to use space, I would certainly be open to it. I'm happy to shamelessly steal good ideas. The layout that was presented attempted to preserve as many of the existing backstops as possible from a cost-saving perspective. So that would be, again, at some point there's only so much you can do with $10.5 million, and so that's the reason why there wasn't a dramatic change proposed for any of those, just because the cost of relocating backstops would end up adding to the cost of the project. But if there was a way to do it efficiently, or as I said to Ms. Abramson, if it turns out that that large contingency is not necessary, there may be other ways to allocate the funds within the project budget. And then, Ms. Kessler, your questions about, and you also had a question about whether it's possible to make a permanent comfort station. And again, same answer is, I think there's a way of getting a nice comfort station onto the property as far away from the other comfort station as possible, so you cover more of the property, and it's kind of a more efficient way of doing it, at least in the short term. And then if it becomes an expectation of something that really should be permanent, we'd have to address that at some point in the future. And then conditions on the money for the two donations from the developers. There weren't any conditions on the money, so they were given to the school district to defray the costs of potential enrollment increases that might occur from the property, from their developments. So I don't want to say that $2 million is not a lot of money, but from an operational perspective, and it's kind of the same conversation we started with on the later start time, operationally that wouldn't change much for very long. But if you can invest it in something that's a permanent asset that the district has, that money kind of lives on in perpetuity. So my own thought is that one-time expenses are best matched up against one-time costs, and anytime that can be a cost for something that's a permanent asset, then that's an advantage. So I think that answers all the round one questions. Ms. Getz, I know you have more, and more than welcome.
Okay, and my other questions relate to environmental concerns. So Stillwell is an amazing county asset as a natural preserve. And as I'm looking at the proposals, two things stood out to me. One was the electric lighting. Stillwell is a very sunny spot. I know, I've been there for soccer games. And why aren't we, so my question was, were we looking at solar lighting? So that was one. Because I think it is much more in keeping with a greener world. Okay? And then the other thing is the turf. There are still debates about turf versus natural grass. And turf is essentially recycled plastic. And I do have conceptually a hard time with putting plastic down in front of a nature preserve. And I also have a hard time with some of the data that I saw when I was working at Scientific American, but it's still, I was looking up more recent ones, about turf versus natural grass and injuries to athletes. And so I did look up a few studies, and I did present some of them to the district in my email, but you know, a lot of them are done in college athletes, but the one that I found was on research on high school, was that on a particular study that was recently done, and it was at a university hospital, identified a total of 950 injuries from the 2017-2018 athletic seasons, with 585 of them occurring on synthetic turf and 368 on natural grass. So there's a whole, there's sites, but one is safehealthyplayingfields.org, which also goes into environmental concerns beyond the difference in injuries between grass and natural turf, and also goes into how when it heats up, there's more toxins released in the hot weather, and that is of impact to students or people have allergies and things like that, possibly seniors working. I also wondered about the asphalt path, which again, why not a gravel path for seniors? One that is still, level, obviously. But again, just in keeping with trying to keep the ethos of Stillwell as a nature preserve. But I am concerned, and so I did ask about, have we done studies, have we looked at, I understand that turf is cheaper, and I understand that it's more convenient due to rain, but I do feel as if it's not just athletes using those fields, it's a lot of recreational soccer students, just interested in general health issues like keeping healthy, like my students were. And so, I understand that there's better cleats that need to be used on those turfs to prevent those injuries to knees and ACLs. So those were my other questions.
Hi, I'm Eileen Ziegler. I am a town resident. I guess my first question is, first and foremost, I still don't really get why we need to buy this property from the county. Why not just work with them to renovate it rather than taking on, the ownership for the school district? And if we are going to take on the ownership, why are we opening up the use of it to all Nassau County residents? I know that parking and the condition of the parking lots have always been an issue. They have been for many years there. So I guess I'm wondering also, if this project goes forward, how many additional parking spaces are we going to actually see there? I'm also wondering how long is this construction expected to take? And how will you ensure that there are not going to be cost overruns? In terms of cost, I saw, I guess you went over briefly, I'm not familiar with, but was it $23 in costs that you estimated based upon $10,000 in taxes? So if you can explain a little bit more about that and how you came up with those numbers. And I guess last is, I will tell you that I found out about this meeting really by accident, and I don't think these meetings have been publicized, not nearly enough. So I'm wondering, what do you plan to do to get the word out to residents so people are much more informed before the budgetary vote, which is not that far away? Thank you.
Okay, once again, Ron Gans, what is the actual property status, the sports fields that you speak of? And is Stillwell, which is 270 acres, does that include the front sports field, or is that something that's not considered in that 270 acres? As you know, the back of Stillwell becomes state land, that's Trailview State Park. I also believe the community outreach and information plus the rush to vote seems to lack transparency. I do believe a very small percentage of residents are actually aware of this happening. I also don't understand the big deal about the walking track. People already can walk the loop around the back, around the present sports field, as well as a very short distance behind the sports field is a tall grass natural habitat that's mowed regularly by the town of Oyster Bay that is very often used by walkers and runners and people visiting the preserve.
Kind of going back to what was said before, my question, and the other woman that mentioned the same thing. If we're working, I understand you don't know what the county would do with the money, but if you're working together, which is what I had in my question, which I don't see why that can't be done, and we've got $2 million committed to us from these builders, we're halfway at the budget. So if we don't own the property, what offsets are there that bring it down that are considerate to the taxpayers as school owners, and the fact that, again, as residents here in the town, in Syosset, I'm trying to figure out why do we have to own it? Because as time goes on, these costs are going to go up. It doesn't say your maintenance is going to go up, the salaries of the people that are here are going to go up, the benefits going to go up, everything continues to go up. You talk a lot about fixed costs, but a lot of these costs as we move forward are not fixed, and they will increase. As I said before, and the question about maintenance, I'm sorry, but I don't have confidence in you guys doing maintenance. Not you personally. I happen to live right down a block from Woodland. I'm living in Syosset 43 years. That field, when I first moved here, was used by Little Leagues. Now it's reused by dogs and people practicing the golf swings. I don't see, other than going mowing, I haven't seen seeding, any kind of, aerating, none of this stuff is being done. Why is that not happening? And how does that give us confidence that you're really going to take good care of this and get the full life expectancy out of the turf should it be used? And these are the concerns. I mean, and our field is not the only one that's neglected. And I would like to see us being taken care of, and as well as the other residents of the town. One of them is on Woodland Avenue, right by Montfort Place, between Montfort and Schoolhouse. Okay? And then if you know it, you know the condition of it.
Hello, my name is Matt Silver, also class of 1992, Syosset grad. Live in Woodbury. I have 2 kids in the school district. Formerly, I was on the board of Syosset baseball and I retired a couple years ago. It was taken over my life, so I had to step aside. But I worked closely with Josh Lafazan for many years when he became a Nassau County legislator in pushing, and helping him and coach him to get to go to the county for the money. So the issue with Stillwell is owned by the county, leased to the town. Town won't put any money into it because it's owned by the county. And the county typically doesn't invest in parks like Stillwell. They go to Cantiac or to Mitchell Field or Eisenhower or bigger county parks. So the plan was to get the most money from the county and then kind of figure it out. And unfortunately, $3 million was the most, and COVID came, and that's where we are today. So the way I look at things is we have a $10.5 million project that half the money is being funded from either outside resources. So the school district is getting a property for $1 pretty much from the county, and the funding is 50 cents on the dollar because half of it's already covered. So to me, that sounds like a pretty good deal. I've seen Syosset Soccer stepped up and offered $50,000 a year towards the annual maintenance, because my biggest concern is the annual maintenance, because I think I don't know where that can go. What I would like to see is the other organizations who currently have the permits, whether it be flag football, lacrosse, as well as baseball, be able to come out and see what they can do so they can subsidize the cost of the maintenance from the community to more on the cost to the kids and the families who will be using it more. But from a standpoint of, I think it's great for the school district. I don't know the numbers of how many kids in Syosset soccer, lacrosse, softball, baseball that utilize the fields, but they're in the thousands, I would assume. I think it would be great for the community. I've spoken to several realtors who think it will be a great selling point besides the education that they get in Syosset, and they see a premium, even more premium, on our homes in our community. So I think it's a great deal. I appreciate your work you're doing, but my other question is private fundraising. Like, I don't know, has anyone reached out to Amazon? I know that was something that was brought up. Can we do other things from a community standpoint to help subsidize the costs to lessen the burden on the school district and all the taxpayers? So I would like to see more things that we can do to lessen the potential burden on us. But I think it's great, and I could look forward to it. Unfortunately, my kids will probably be graduated and be done with by the time the fields are done, but I think the next generation of kids will definitely enjoy it. So I appreciate the help, and thank you.
Hi, Jody Roquito. How are you? I totally get it from a community perspective. I am still not clear on how the high school and the 2 middle schools will be using Stillwell. If you're telling me that every varsity team will be playing their games on a turf field, if you're telling me that every 8th grade Southwoods and HBT game, home game, will be played on a turf field at Stillwell, for me, I've written the question, I think, at least once, maybe twice already about that. I want to know that. How is the school using it? Not for the weekends, not after school for Syosset soccer, Syosset baseball, flag football, or anything, but for those 3 secondary schools, how will it be used? I want to know that they're using it and to what degree, because that to me is really important. We are not spending the money on the fields behind the high school, behind Southwoods, behind HBT. So to me, if you're not spending the money on those fields, that was taken out of the equation a few years ago, then I want to know the commitment from the 3 of you that they will all, how much of it will they be using? Okay? You understand what I mean? Thank you.
Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit in reverse order and ask Mr. Hamilton to take some of the questions around the maintenance. So he and his team have looked at this in terms of the maintenance, and I'd like him to just go through how they developed those estimates to give folks a sense of what we were thinking about.
Sure. So for the maintenance cost, we started with looking at and speaking to the architects to understand for the artificial turf how those fields should be maintained for a field that's used frequently. And we came up with and we reached out to some vendors to receive some cost for outside contractors to perform maintenance on the turf fields 10 times a year. And that was in the initial cost that Dr. Rogers presented as part of the overall cost of, I think, about $343,000 a year in maintenance. There was a portion of that which is the turf maintenance, which is to fill the turf fields with the chrome rubber. There's also a cost to maintain what's called the GMAX rating to help with concussion protocols and make sure that the turf fields are safe for play. So there's a function that has to happen for insurance purposes regarding the GMAX rating. Then for the other cost, we looked at some supply costs, whether it's fertilizer, grass seed, things like that. We also factored in the cost of water for the restrooms, for any type of irrigation that may be needed, and we came up with the cost for that. And that was really how we came up with the ongoing maintenance cost for the Stillwell facilities.
I'll return to that a little bit as I go through these sort of sequentially. So, Ms. Getz, your environmental concerns, I like the idea of solar. And the school district is currently engaged in a solar project as part of our energy performance contract to try and offset some of our energy use now. So I'm going to ask Dr. Rufo to just talk about that briefly, if she would.
As part of our energy performance contract, as Dr. Rogers said, we have photovoltaic components on five schools. And we also have upgrades that we're doing currently to lighting throughout the districts, ballast, change lamps, as well as a variety of other energy efficient savings. Exterior lights, Greg, I can't recall if we're doing anything on the exterior lights, but he's nodding in agreement, so we're also doing those. So there's lots of, I guess, 20 million worth of energy improvements that we're undertaking district-wide.
The reason why they're being done on school buildings is the photovoltaic panels have a long life, and so the roofs also have a long life. It doesn't make sense to put the panels on a roof that needs to be repaired in a year or two. So as the district has been fixing a number of its roofs, as those roofs get fixed, they become a prime location to put the PV panels, the solar panels. So it's easier to put them on the roof because they're up, they're out of the way, they're not visible, but the district has been actively engaged in trying to offset our energy use through the use of solar panels. So as more roofs get repaired, that will also free up more roof space for future project if we decide to do another energy performance contract or something like that. In terms of your points about the safety of turf, I've asked our architects to assemble some of the studies that are out there. What I've seen so far is the studies I've seen say that turf is safer for kids to play on. The EPA has done a study on turf, did not flag issues from an environmental standpoint. I know that if you search, you can find documents in support of either point of view, but we've been going to these authoritative sources like EPA, and they're neutral on it. So we did that study 4 years ago when we were proposing the turf field here, and I haven't seen anything that has changed the state of that debate since then. And you're right, there are different turf heights and different cleat sizes that make sense at those different turf heights, and I did not personally know that, but I'm assuming that the kinds of folks that are deeply involved in soccer and baseball are probably much more educated about that than I. There were a couple questions along the lines of why is it necessary to buy from the county, or can't we just work with the county and improve the property together and then not have the county own it? And it's an idea, but it was not offered to us. And what was offered was taking over the property, taking responsibility for the property, and taking the money conveyed with it. So I'm not left with the impression from those conversations that there's a willingness to try and do something in a partnership. Is it possible? And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there are prohibitions on school districts spending money to improve something that isn't its own, and I think those might get in the way. On the other hand, you can do intermunicipal agreements, so it's not an absolute prohibition, but I do think it would make it a lot more complicated. And my own observation from 50 yards away is that the shared ownership by the county and operating by the town has been an impediment to the property so far, and we would just be changing where that locus of impediment is by involving the school district as another entity. Dr. Rufo, can you just talk a little bit about the $23 per 10,000 in taxes to explain how you arrived at that and what that dollar figure represents?
In trying to calculate the potential increase in taxes as a result of the debt service, and as Dr. Rogers said, it's overall it's not a net increase because it's offset by debt rolling off, which is a typical strategy that districts do. We try to incur debt at a time when you have debt rolling off to either offset or more than offset, which is the case that we have here. So when you take a look at the amount of debt service, so for us that's about roughly 500,000 was estimated, at 477 is the average amount. And so you divide that by the levy to get a percent of the levy, and that is essentially like less than a quarter of 50% of the levy. And so that, when it's divided, and you divide it by the levy, and you get the figure of the 0.23%, turns out to be $23 for every 10,000. That's a little bit maybe more technical than you wanted me to be, but that's how we arrive at that figure. And again, so if you're just using rough numbers, well, that's the increase related to that additional debt service. That's being offset by the $1 million per year that's rolling off.
Question around cost overruns and construction timing, and I'll take both of those together. So once, as I mentioned in the opening presentation, once the final architectural drawings are done, then the state gets it. The state takes their 40 weeks. They issue an approval. They essentially give us a building permit is how that process works. Then the school district goes out to bid, and these projects are all publicly bid by the school district. So school districts can either purchase on a bid, or they can piggyback on a bid that was done by another school district. So often what we will do, and Mr. Hamilton's office will do this, is look to see if there is another school district that went through the bidding process already, and if we can take, and we think the pricing's favorable, then we would take advantage of that by piggybacking on the bid. Whatever the bids come in at is what will drive the cost of the project. So our hope is to get favorable bidding numbers. The estimates that we were given were estimates that were done by the architects and engineers who laid out this property for us. So their estimates are what we're relying on. The construction market is a variable market, and this will occur 2 years from now. So it's impossible, of course, to predict what the construction market will look like 2 years from now. Some markets, like mechanical, has just been exploding of late, and there are others that have been kind of soft of late. We've seen some of our recent bids come in very favorable, which has been a relief, and we've also seen a couple of bids that were higher than we thought that they should be, and the board rejected those bids and went out for additional bids. In terms of the two questions on publicity for this, part of the reason for holding these meetings is to try and do as much publicity as possible. We do recognize that we're moving quickly, and so we're trying to create as many opportunities to be in front of the public with this as possible. In every mailbox in Syosset next week will be a multi-page flyer that has all of this information and links to where things can be found online. As I mentioned earlier, this district has set up a dedicated website for this. It's also pinned to the homepage of the district's webpage. It's also pinned to the top of the district's Facebook feed. We've sent information about this out on our social media channels, and we have emailed the persons that are in our email database 4 times. So there's 9,400 people in that database, and we've sent a series of 4 emails to those persons on that list. That said, we can always do more. The best asset that we have for reaching the whole community is that mailer, because it goes into every physical mailbox, and as I said, that'll come in about a week. Is it possible to walk around the park without a loop, or is it possible to walk around the park on a gravel path? These things are certainly possible. The advantage, I think, for doing some paved is that it's better access for people who are mobility challenged and need something like a wheelchair, or somebody who's pushing a stroller, for example. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the smoother the surface, the better it is for extraction if there's somebody who is unfortunately injured to get them off. I think I answered the question about the county working with us. Mr. Nathan, I take your point about the property on the corner of Montfort Place. For those who don't know, this used to be a school. The property was chopped up, and most of it was developed for houses, leaving behind 2 very small, little leaguey sized baseball fields. The district does maintain that property, but the district doesn't use that property, so it probably could stand more attention. And I'll certainly take that as a note for us and our team to go back and revisit that. On the flip side, however, I'm informed that the Stillwell property is reputed to have a bad bee problem. And in my experience, bee problems tend to be garbage problems. And so Stillwell seems to be a place where there's probably lots of sugary sport drinks. And if the garbage isn't taken away very frequently, those accumulate, they attract pests, particularly bees. So my hope would be that we would do a very good job of maintaining the property and a very good job of maintaining the garbage, and that would hopefully cut down on the challenges that we might have with bees on the property. And lastly, Mr. Silver, I think Mr. Hamilton responded to your question on the estimates for the maintenance, and then your last question about private fundraising. At the last Board of Education meeting, the board approved a resolution to have the school district start an educational foundation. These are common. Probably half the school districts in the state have a companion educational foundation, and that ends up being a vehicle for charitable donations to the district for projects exactly like this. And so now that that's been proposed and the board has adopted a resolution to start the process, we'll start working on that, and that would really be the vehicle by which the district would accept donations that could either defray the cost of construction, defray the ongoing costs of operations, or maybe change the scope of work to add in more permanent comfort stations or something like that. But that would be the vehicle to do it, and obviously that's just been added to my to-do list by the board. So that brings us to the close of our conversation. I thank you all for taking the time and coming out, and look forward to seeing you again soon, and I hope you all stay safe and well. Thank you.